Hi everyone, AJ again here, and I would like to talk about the popular topic of source code ownership, right? Source code ownership after a software project is completed. Most companies would have a clause in their agreement, their project agreement, yeah, where it is stated that all source codes developed in the course of the project by the vendor f- for the project, right, would belong to the company, to the customer. And the system is not owned by the vendor, okay, it is 100% owned by the customer. Some might even go as far as saying that the intellectual property or the IP, okay, of the software belongs to the customer. Well, in reality, this is not such a simple black and white situation, right? It depends on the situation and what has been agreed on. Okay, for example, normally the party who creates any creative work, right, would be the owner of that creative work and therefore would hold the intellectual property or the IP of that creative endeavor. Thus, logically, you can't say that you own someone else's IP because you were not the creator of that endeavor, that creative piece of endeavor. Okay, someone else did. So, but how do you resolve this issue about customers wanting to own everything that was developed by the vendor, okay, during the software development project? Well, IP or intellectual property can be transferred. Okay, maybe you might not be able to own it per se because, as I said earlier, it doesn't make sense, right, when it's developed by someone else, because it's their creative endeavor, right? But you can transfer, okay, you can transfer intellectual property on a temporary basis, right? Such as, I think the most popular way would be via licensing arrangements between the customer and the vendor, right? The license, right, would then need to spell out clearly what the customer can or cannot do and the rights, okay, of both the customer and the vendor. This method would be the most common method that is currently being used in the industry. If the customer still wishes to own the entire source code, okay, based on the software development work being done for the project, it might not be possible even, okay, if the vendor had incorporated certain components in the software that belong to them via some kind of patenting, okay. So if there is some technologies specifically developed by the vendor that has been patented, then the customer cannot own the whole piece of software, okay, because parts of it belongs to the vendor. So when we talk about licensing arrangements earlier, that would actually resolve this issue. Okay, that means based on the licensing arrangement, okay, it would state specifically, what the customer can or cannot do, and also what is the duration of the agreement, okay, in terms of the licensing, and whether the customer wishes to continue after the duration has ended. So I think the only way that the customer can own 100% of the source code developed by the vendor for a software development project is if the source codes were conceptualized and developed from the ground up, okay, all fresh by the vendor specifically for the customer, with no patented components being used as part of the solution. Okay, the customer must also ensure that this arrangement is being spelled out clearly, okay, in the project agreement, so that there will be no disputes in the future between the customer and the vendor, right? So I just would like to share this with you because I've been in more than a handful of projects whereby it's a very popular clause whereby companies would usually insist for the software to be owned by the company as the customer after the vendor had completed the work for them. Okay, so this is just to share with you my take on it, right? My opinion on it and my suggestion. So I hope that you find these points to be useful, okay, for you. Thank you and see you in the next video.